Welcome to the Soul Touched by Dogs podcast, the show for dog lovers who see dogs not as toys or tools, but wise souls worth our respect and care. I'm Anke Herman, and I'm your host. I talk to awesome humans, people who do great work for dogs and their people. So come and join us for today's conversation. Hello and welcome, Nora. I'm delighted to have you here with me.
Hi, Anki. I'm delighted to be here.
Wonderful. So let people know where in this lovely world you are, because you are 9 hours behind where I am. And what's your business with dogs?
Yes, I am. I'm on the west coast of the US. I'm in Washington State, sort of inland, a couple hundred miles inland from the ocean, in the Northwest. Um, and my business with dogs started out in 1997 when I started my own dog care business. And it was mostly play groups where I would take large groups of dogs out where they could be off leash for a couple hours, and then I would take them all back home. And the business was very highly valued by all of the business professionals that were populating the town where I was living at the time. It was building and building and building. Now Amazon and Microsoft are there, and it's full of those kind of people who have to leave their dogs at home all day. So I've since retired from that, but I had about 20 years before that started learning about human nutrition and that the effect that human nutrition has on our health, our feelings, our psychology, the effect that food has on all parts of our being. And I was seeing dogs being fed this commercial garbage that was having the same effect on them that junk food has on us. And so I started gathering information for my customers, and I made it was probably about a 10-page handout initially, just trying to teach people what I had learned because I just dove in with both feet and because I wanted to feed my dog properly. I wanted to make my dog live as long as he possibly could. And it eventually became this book, Rotational MonoFeeding, and we call it RMF for short. And about um, 15, 16 years ago, I started my website with basically the outline of that book on it. And it didn't really do much until, I would get book sales now and then. And then I started a Facebook group, and I was a Facebook holdout for many years. I didn't want any part of it. But I started a dog feeding group in 2018, I believe, and it really kickstarted my business. I hadn't used social media much up until that point. And so now I have a YouTube channel, I have a couple of Facebook groups, and I teach people the very simple, basic principles that pretty much govern all life on Earth. And they are applicable to all species, humans and dogs included. We might have a different range of foods and conditions that we thrive in that are different from what dogs thrive in, but the same principles guide or govern us, because if we don't stay within those ranges, we get sick. Disease is the natural, predictable outcome of our failure to fulfill our biological needs. And that's what people don't understand. Disease is not something that you're born with. It's not something that floats around in the air. It's not something that you are destined to suffer. It's not something that naturally happens as you age. No, 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 that's not aging, that's degeneration, that is disease. So many people confuse aging and degeneration. But what we see when we see people in their 80s who aren't able to function properly, that's disease. That's not aging, because aging happens much slower. And it's the same with dogs. Dogs begin to show their age in midlife, which is 7 or 8, and typically, and that's when they start to develop problems. And just like we humans in our 20s, when we can eat whatever we want, we can eat the junk as it rolls out of the factory, and we still function properly. Everything seems to work. It's just like that with dogs, and that's how they do fine on kibble and canned garbage through their midlife years. Typically, it's getting to be that dogs are encountering chronic disease earlier in life, and that's getting to be a huge problem. We have cancer in 2, 3-year-old dogs. It's crazy.
Oh, that's
Crazy.
Jesus. I could not agree. I'm so glad you're here. Because I definitely, yeah, I've had my own experience with my very first dog where he wasn't doing well on the stuff that the vet said I was to feed him exclusively the kibble that he sold, right? Funny that. But so I really early on came across a book where the one key takeaway was read the labels, right? Don't look at what it says on the front. So now you said something that really sparked my curiosity, and that's the universal principle for all beings. Like, can you just unpack that a little bit? Like, what are the things that are common for all of us, regardless of how many legs we've got?
Yeah, that's a great question because I followed this general body of knowledge called natural hygiene, and it lists or elucidates, like I think there are 20 or 30 principles of life. And right up there in the top is every species has a range of foods that they're biologically adapted to thrive on. And that's different for every species. It's not black and white. There's a little crossover. If something is called a carnivore, it doesn't necessarily mean they're not going to eat, plant foods. If something is called an herbivore, it doesn't necessarily mean they will never eat an animal-derived food. But that's the basic idea. And some of the other principles that govern life are fresh air, fresh water, psychological security. And that's going to be different for us than it is for dogs. What does it take for dogs to feel psychologically secure? Well, there's lots of prey out there for them to catch, right? I could care less about prey, right? I don't care about prey. I want to know that there's fruit on the tree in my backyard or in my refrigerator or whatever. That's my priority. So that gives me psychological security. For me, not thinking about bombs falling on my head, that's great for having, good psychological,
That
security.
helps.
But dogs couldn't care less about that. So that's different, but it's still the general category of psychological security is important for us as it is for dogs. For us, meaningful work. For dogs, being able to express their natural inclinations and urges, whatever those are, being out in the sunshine, having babies, teaching their babies how to get food, running. Dogs move, 40, 50 miles a day. I don't really think humans are meant to travel 40, 50 miles a day. So that's not really part of our makeup, but see the general categories are still all the same, air, water, living out there, living in nature, being able to express our natural inclinations. All of those things are important to us. So for dogs, we need to figure out how we can replicate those conditions that they evolved in over the eons. And the closer we can get to that, the higher the level of health that our dogs will enjoy.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I think it also explains why it's so hard, right? Whenever with more and more people living in apartments and all sort of crammed in, and you're just a
Right,
little balcony and then just kind of walk around the pavement. I think a
right,
lot of dogs are so removed from that. So
right.
I'm curious. I think we all agree that kibble is the kind of equivalent of fast food.
Mhm.
Actually, it's funny, like mine don't even know what that is either. They'd be like, is that edible? Don't know. So what do you feed your dogs?
I feed my dog according to the model that I developed starting 25 years ago, that forms the skeleton of rotational monofeeding. And rotational monofeeding just refers to mono, in my definition, just refers to separating plant foods from meat foods because neither dogs nor humans should be mixing meat and plants together. As crazy as that sounds, meat requires an acidic environment in the digestive cavity in order to be broken down. And plants require an alkaline digestive environment. And when you mix acid and alkaline, they neutralize each other. And that means not very much of the food is going to be getting digested. So that's what monofeeding refers to mostly. Although there are some plant foods that really aren't friends with each other, like you don't want to mix fats and sugars together. It's just not a good idea. Um, but apart from that, the way I feed my dog is she gets meat probably 3 or 4 times per week. She gets 1 or 2 fasting days per week where she gets nothing but water. And then one day out of the week, I generally give her a full day of fruit. Like I will give her a banana in the morning and half an apple later on. And she only weighs 10 pounds. So I mean, she could live on my scraps, right? My apple cores, but I don't eat meat, of course. So I still have to buy it for her. But that's what she eats. And fortunately, I'm still able to get some wild deer scrap here I live in a state where hunting is very popular. So I'm still able to get scrap from hunted deer that are processed in my state. So that's what she's eating right now. I generally fill my freezer in the fall when it's hunting season, and I have really nice venison bones for her to chew on. And apart from that, I buy chicken for her. I buy organic free-range chicken. And, organic free-range chicken gets to be a little prohibitive if you have a big dog or if you have many dogs. But it doesn't really matter if you feed organic or not. You can feed conventional if you want, because feeding raw, biologically appropriate food puts you so far ahead of all the other dog owners out there that are feeding commercial garbage, even if they're feeding raw um, that it, that starts to take kind of a backseat, whether it's conventional or organic. And my philosophy is sort of that most of the crap that is fed to these animals in order to get them really fat at slaughter time, which is what makes money for the processors, can be trimmed because it gets stored in fat cells on the animal. And as long as we're trimming off all of these globs of fat that you don't see on wild animals, you can pretty much replicate, even if you buy conventional meat, you can pretty much replicate a wild dog's diet, or you can get close enough that your dog will thrive. Your dog
Mm.
will reverse disease, not ever, get diseased in the first place if you catch it in time, or if you start feeding early enough before they're diseased, and you can get the maximum potential lifespan out of your dog, which is super important to dog owners because they don't live as long as we do. The most we can hope for is a couple decades, and that's a portion of our lives. Why not get the absolute most that you can, especially if you have 10 or 15 years invested in a dog and if you've spent all of that time training and bonding and getting that dog comfortable with you and vice versa and knowing each other's routines and body language and all of that investment, you want every day that you can get back
Absolutely,
from that.
absolutely. Like, yeah, no, for sure. And funny enough, like this first one that like he made it to almost 17 years, and he never ate kibble. And the other
Right?
one as well, and the other one's alive, So yeah, it's like I was laughing when you were saying like, oh, she gets a banana, and I'm like, my 110-pound dog would go like, what? You kidding me?
Yeah. A lot of dogs do that. But a lot of dogs, like I took a dog out from the shelter yesterday on a day trip and I offered her all kinds of real foods and she loved tomatoes, cucumbers, and apples. I offered her all three and she
Mm,
just loved them both. And she's a kibble dog. She's a kibble fed dog.
yeah, but they
So
always know though,
you
right?
never
I
know.
don't, yeah. So what do you like? obviously people get told, oh, you must feed kibble, right? I mean, I don't know whether it's in the US, but here definitely vets will tell you like that's like you kind of poison your dog if you give them, and you must not give
Right.
them, because I think what they're often also trying to say is people will kind of give their spicy, greasy table scraps, which is obviously not the alternative, right? So we're talking no spices and, so how do you suggest somebody goes about it and they go, oh, actually, yeah, that makes sense. Like if I can, give my dog more longevity, but like they're used to kibble, how would you suggest that transition? Would you go cold turkey, or will you start mixing it for a bit, or what's the best way to transition?
Well, actually, not very much transitioning is necessary. Everything that you need to know, and this is blatant self-promotion, but everything you need to know is
Well,
right
that's
in
what we're here for.
I
We
have
want people to know.
Yes, I have a flow chart in the back that will guide people to the rotation that they need to feed their dogs. But there's really not much transition that's necessary at all. And in fact, transitioning gets people in trouble sometimes because they think they need to do things gradually and they don't. I mean, if you're carrying a burden, you don't necessarily need to get rid of your burden slowly. Throw it off. Get rid of it, you know. So if you've last fed your dog kibble on Tuesday, you can feed your dog some kind of plant foods on Wednesday. And if your dog is one of those like yours that won't eat fruit, um, then I recommend a meal of cooked yams and quinoa. Quinoa is a high protein seed that most dogs like, and cooked yams these are the orange potatoes, are pretty much universally loved by dogs. So, and they're even starting to make, dog treats out of yams, and you've probably seen sweet potatoes. You've probably seen them in the stores. But so what
I've
that
seen
does is,
recipes of people putting them in the air, and I was just actually, mine loves fruit, but she would go like one banana or half a banana. You've got to be kidding! Give me like three. Like she's
yeah,
big. She wants a
yeah.
lot of it.
Yes, and she probably would need three or four or even more,
Yeah.
for a day or a meal. But where was I? Okay, so the transition day just needs to be plant foods because if you have kibble in the gut, if you have remnants of that kibble that you fed on Tuesday
Yes.
still lingering in the gut, haven't gotten all the way out, if fruit or plant food sits on top of that, it's not going to create the mess that raw meat does. So if you feed raw meat on top of kibble, say if you feed kibble on Tuesday and you want to introduce raw meat on Wednesday, well, there's a possibility and many people have discovered this from trying to transition their dog slowly by mixing raw and kibble together, raw meat and kibble together, and I did that once and it was a huge mistake. And that's how I know that it can have very bad consequences. The consequences are not life-threatening, they're not acute, they're just messy because a dog will vomit or have diarrhea if the meat sits on top of the kibble and putrefies. Because the poisons that are created when meat sits around in the gut and putrefies are pretty severe. They're poisonous, right? They're toxic. So the body has to get rid of that. And dogs are set up to eat some decomposing food, right? They will eat rotting carrion. But sometimes the body will just go, wait a minute, we've got kibble in here. Now we've got raw meat coming in. I'm just going to cut my losses and get rid of this whole mess and start over. And so it's a crapshoot, right? You never know which dogs you're going to have that kind of problem with. So the way to do that is to either fast the dog completely, which means they get nothing at all on Wednesday except water. But if you don't want to do that, you can try feeding fruit. If the dog refuses fruit, then you can feed this combination or just cook yams, combination of quinoa and yams, or just yams for that transition day. And then on Thursday, you will generally see the orange poops that come out from having eaten the cooked yams the day before. And that gives you the all clear signal
Yes.
that everything has been cleaned out in the intestinal tract, and you can safely feed raw meat the next day. and bones.
Oh, that makes so much sense. And that also explains why people feel, I think it's off, probably, I would imagine they see the thing and draw the wrong conclusions. It's
Yeah.
almost like they put it together and think, oh, like my dog can't handle the rapid like change, so we need to transition slower. So it's actually the other way around. It's like
Yes.
it's just the mixing that's actually the
Right.
problem. That
Right.
makes so much sense.
And it's
Yeah.
actually worse than that because they will blame raw food, they will blame germs, they will go back to the vet and say, "Oh, my dog threw up yesterday. What should I do?" And then they get drugs on top of everything else.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, it could be disastrous for people to try raw food, raw feeding without knowing what they're doing. I even had that to happen to, to myself 25 years ago and to my customers, my dog walking customers, because they would try it and I would go, oh yeah, so that's a problem. So I started, formulating
Mm.
these ideas and going, there's a way to prevent all of those problems that could be disastrous by just making sure that the intestinal tract, the digestive system, is completely clear before you start feeding raw meat.
I mean, it's one of those things like, when you explain it like that, it's like, oh, it feels so obvious.
Yeah.
But I think
Yeah.
it's one of those things that somebody needs to point you to because it's easy to draw the wrong conclusion, for
Yeah.
sure. For sure.
Yeah.
So are there specific, say, you were mentioning before how, I guess people are aware that nutrition has a massive impact on health and can even reverse diseases. So if my dog has something, so are there specific things that, you say, okay, if a dog is ill in one way or another, like does it change the nutrition or would you apply that um, same protocol all the way through?
There are actually very few conditions that require anything specific because what rotational model feeding, RMF, will do is it basically removes all of the causes of disease because everything contained in kibble and commercial dog food contributes to disease, right? All of those substandard waste, wasteful products, those they're basically waste products of the food processing industry. That's what the commercial pet food
Yeah.
industry is all about. It's just the disposal arm of the human food processing industry. And all of those things combined create disease. Those things create disease. Well, when you stop feeding those things and the dog's body is only getting those foods which he has intrinsic familiarity with, let's say, biological adaptation for, then the causes are removed, right? The causes of all disease. It's not just some disease, it's all disease. And once you start, and that's the beauty of natural hygiene, which is the body of knowledge that underlies all of this. It's just life science, right? It's just the science of life. Um, the beauty is once you remove the cause, the body does the healing. The body does the healing. You don't need substances, you don't need remedies, you don't need oils, you don't need supplements, you don't need any products. And that's why I don't sell any products. I would love to be able to sell products because it sure makes earning a living a lot easier, but I can't. It would make me a hypocrite because once you remove the cause of disease, the body does the healing if you just get out of the way. That's what we're doing with this. So there are very few conditions I can't even think of. I mean, I can't even think of one that would require a different protocol than the others. Because we're always, for kidney disease, for example, we're always being told by vets that they need a low protein diet. Well, that's not true because it's not eating too much protein that caused the kidney disease in the first place. It was commercial pet food, which has cooked proteins, which are taxing on the kidneys, and not enough protein and too much fat and all of that. So you're removing that and just giving the dog the foods that the kidneys are set up to digest, to deal with, then the kidneys are going to resolve themselves. They're going to sort themselves out. So that's not even true. So yeah, I just can't even think of a single condition that requires a special feeding protocol. RMF pretty much across the board removes causes of
Yeah.
disease.
I mean, that makes so much sense. And I guess you're probably not popular amongst veterinarians and pet food industry, right?
No, unfortunately, except for the dog owning proletariat out there, RMF doesn't really RMF is in the crosshairs of so many industries. Nobody likes us. Everybody
Except the
has a
dogs, I would imagine.
except the dogs and people who
And the
want
people
their
who want their
dogs
dogs
to
to
be
live.
healthy. Right, because product sellers hate us. And I mean, I try to tell people you don't need supplements, you don't need oils, you don't need products or remedies or blah, blah, blah. Every time I say this, that I make a new enemy. I mean, I have so many people blocked on Facebook that I mean, probably my enemies list is longer than my friends list, but
But that's
people
funny.
earn their living selling those things and it becomes very personal to them. It starts to feel to them like a personal attack when I tell people they don't need to buy supplements or remedies.
Hmm. But I
You
guess
know,
it's the same with people, right? It's almost like you, it's the same principle. And I mean, I guess there's doctor and everybody is like, here's pills and here's this and here's that, and just kind of puffing around on the surface, kind of treating symptoms. And I was lucky enough with with my Leo initially when he got, because obviously, I mean, I didn't know, I found him in the street. It was like, okay, I've got a dog now. Great. I mean, I wanted a dog, but I'd never had one. And so obviously what the vet tells me, I didn't expect it to be so off the mark, right?
yeah,
So I started out, oh, okay, gave him a kibble, and he would, and he had skin problems, right? And it was always a struggle to get him to eat. Like he'd have his little bowl and you'd always like kind of like, always have to encourage him. Like he didn't want it,
smart dog.
and
Mm,
and so when I then stumbled across this book and I go, oh no, don't feed him that. And I looked at the label of the dog food I was sold. I'm like, I'm not giving that. So I changed away, probably not even to something that would, I don't know, I can't even remember. Like I did start kind of not buy stuff, but probably still made lots of mistakes. But the thing was, his skin problems were gone within a few days,
really.
you know, and
Yeah, there's so
and
many
he ate.
conditions.
All of a sudden, he had so much appetite, and all of a sudden, he didn't poop 5 times a day, and like literally a lot,
Right,
all his issues were like gone away within a week.
right. And so many conditions don't require optimal. You can, and that's why people, they try to replicate commercial food. They think that's the ideal to strive for, right? So they
Mm.
try to replicate commercial pet food in their kitchens. And just doing that can solve a lot of problems.
Yeah,
And so people go out and they go, well, I feed this, and I throw everything in the crock pot, and my dog's allergies went away. And, but the problem is later on, that's not ideal either. So the dog will show some improvements initially, but then later on, they will develop more problems. Well, rotational monofeeding is pretty much the best, right? It's taken from what we know about wild dog behavior.
mm.
Wild dog, we can still observe them. We track them. They have GPS trackers on their collars now. We see everything they eat, everything they do, every step they take. We see their wounds heal naturally with no stitching up and no antibiotics. And, sure, sometimes they die, but very often they don't. And they have very serious injuries because their food fights back, right? Their
Yeah,
food wants to go on living. So we have the means to watch wild dogs and see what they eat. And the closer we can get to that, the better.
yeah. I mean, that makes all the sense in the world. And yeah, I'm just like my mind. It's just sort of processing because it feels like it makes so much sense, and people need to, I guess we sort of coming to our senses for people, and I think with dog, and I always think dog food is dogs don't complain. They gobble up whatever, so I think it's easier. I read some, oh, that's right. I like I remember reading, I'm pretty sure you know the details of that um all these health problems with like the dogs kind of have, get cancer, and that dogs kind of die at 10 years, that's all stuff that's actually all very recent, right? That
Yes,
you can literally, I remember reading something that they say, well, you can literally track it back to when commercial dog food was introduced,
yes,
that all these things happen.
yes. Unfortunately, it happens sort of concurrently with a lot of other bad things that have happened too, like jabbing dogs with chemicals, if you know what I mean, and the increasing, amount of jabbing that we do to dogs. I hope people know what I mean by that. And but it's mostly food. It is mostly food, and also the drugging of dogs. And when you said dogs can't complain, it's absolutely true. And that's what makes the fact that vets have become pretty much glorified drug reps. That's what makes it much worse for animals than it is for humans, because so many problems, so many health issues are made worse with the administration of drugs. And what the advantage that humans have is we can go to our doctor and say, you gave me this drug for my symptom, and the
Yeah.
drug actually makes me feel worse. And so I'm going to stop taking that drug. I would like a different drug, whatever. They can do that. Well, you take your dog, and if you're not willing to undergo a lot of very expensive diagnostics, there is a lot of guesswork that goes into diagnosing a dog in the veterinary profession. And once they have a diagnosis, that just tells them what drug to administer. And when the drug is administered, if the owner sees the original symptom go away, that is success in the owner's mind. That is success in the vet's mind. That owner will be going back to get more of that remedy if it's intended to be used longer. And they usually are, right? There's lifetime disease management. That's the goal, right, of the pharmaceutical industry. But what dogs can't do is they can't tell the owner, no, my original symptom is gone away, but I actually feel worse.
Yeah.
I'd like to have my original symptom back because I feel worse. And we see this so much in these horrible drugs like prednisone and Cytopoint and Apoquel and the steroids, and which includes prednisone, and so many others, where dogs just they have seizures and neurological issues and paralysis and those kinds of things. It's horrible. As long as what we see after we administer a drug is not worse than the original symptom, we think that that's successful. Well, it's not. It's not.
Mm.
What we need to do is stay away from the vet, figure out what's, causing, and I've already told everybody here, right here in this podcast, that it's commercial pet food, right? Just change that. You don't have to worry about your dog's psychological security if the right food is going in his mouth, because his body is going to then have enough energy to heal itself.
It's that
So it's,
self-healing that makes so much sense, right? So it's
yes,
almost like it's not our job to heal the dog, it's to create the environment where the body can heal itself. And that's like
right.
it's the same for people,
Yes, it is.
So it makes all the sense in the world. So can you just put that book up again? Like, obviously we're going to pop the link in the show notes. And where can people find out more about you, any questions they have, and work with you or get in touch?
Well, probably the best way. I mean, I'm most attentive to Facebook, but if people just want the bare bones explanation of what it's all about, the website is a good place to start. And it's rotationalmonofeeding.com, RMF Pets for short. RMF Pets, you can do either. My website originally was called No More Vet Bills because I really wanted
I
to
love it.
encourage I wanted to encourage people to stay away from the vet industry because it has become, in effect, kind of predatory, just like the human pharmaceutical industry or the human, medical industry, your goal should be to just stay away from it. Just avoid it. It's for emergency care. It's not for disease. They function best as trauma care, not for disease. So we just want to avoid disease, we want to prevent it, reverse it if it's already there, and then just stay away from them. So anyway, I have a couple of Facebook groups. I have a public Facebook group with 22,000 members, and then I have a private Facebook group, which is subscription only, and that's the one that I moderate. I answer people's questions every day. I do a weekly podcast for the subscribers where I take their questions. That's every Saturday. I have a YouTube channel under my name and one under Rotational MonoFeeding with lots of interviews just like this one. And some other like webinars and whatnot. And I have a slight presence on Instagram. And I think that's pretty much it.
Awesome.
So.
Well, thank you so much. Really, really enlightening and insightful. And, I think we're all going to go run and get that book now. So,
I hope so.
Because our dogs will definitely, and I have a sense that I think, we're going to learn some stuff for our own health as well, because as you said before,
Yes.
there's more parallels than there are differences. So that was
Definitely.
really wonderful point. So thank you so much.
Yes, I like to, in fact, think of my book as a portal for people to start thinking about their own health, because many times people are threatened by the idea of changing themselves. But when they go ahead and make changes for their dog, it's like you don't have to do anything different. You just put different food in the bowl. You don't have to address your addictions to put different food in the bowl, but you do that and you see these miraculous changes in your dog and you go, wait a second, I could probably do that for me too. And they do. And it has been effective in that way for so many people. So
Oh, I love that.
anyway,
I
I
love
won't
that.
blab on anymore. I'm so thankful for this opportunity to talk to you this morning, Anki. So
Well, thank you so much. And thank you for sharing all of this. Like they were like you, I was kind of like, wait, what? My mind was racing. So much insight in such a short amount of time. So I'm incredibly grateful. Thank you so much.
all right, you're welcome. Have a good evening.
You too. Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed the episode, don't forget to subscribe and leave a review so other dog lovers can find the show. If you haven't already, head over to soultouchedbydogs.com and sign up for weekly doggy cuteness, tips, recommendations, and personal stories to warm your dog-loving heart. And if you know a awesome human you think I should interview, I'd love an introduction. Email me at Anke, that's ANKE, @soultouchedbydogs.com.